All right, so it is Omnibus with Boris Blatnik. Boris, thanks for doing this as always.
My pleasure, Seth. It's always great to be on the show with you.
Yeah, and I say, as always, we've now had a number of different conversations. Most recently, we talked about Asia Pacific. We have spoken about Europe at length in the past. Today, we're going to set our sights on the Americas, right?
The south of the Americas, or
Well,
let's say south of the border.
South of the U.S. border. So we're going to leave.
Border.
Yeah, we're leaving Canada alone. Plenty of competition, not too many people. The United States of America has its own issues, is where we'll leave that. We almost have federal legislation having something to do with cannabis. So that we'll just leave that there.
Hopefully there's some good news coming in the next 12 months. Who knows?
Who knows is really why we're going to focus on, I think, Mexico, Colombia, Brazil. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think those are probably three very, very large markets that we have our eyes set on.
Okay, so when I have conversations like these with people like you, Colombia usually leads. Everyone loves Colombia. This was,
Yeah, I mean, I think Colombia is very interesting in the fact that they're giving out licenses to grow, both CBD and THC extracts and export these products throughout the world.
Yeah.
And, their production costs are very, very low. Climate is great. And, I love Colombia.
Exactly.
I think and the population is also enormous, right? So I think the population in Colombia is around 50 million.
Over 100 million. Yeah, absolutely.
Over 100 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Well, we can check that later.
I think Mexico is around 100.
Oh, you're right. I conflated the two. Over 100 million in Mexico and about 50 million in Colombia. That's me, right?
When you add those two together, it's still smaller than the Brazilian population.
And here we go. We move over. A lot of people, mention first that the language is a problem, but forgetting language, we've got over 200 million people in Brazil.
That's right. I mean, Brazil is still a very tricky environment. CBD, for example, is still a controlled substance there. And but the good news is that there is companies that have already been approved by Anvisa, which is the FDA of Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
And once you're approved, then you're able to provide CBD to patients in Brazil who have prescriptions. So in Brazil, if a patient has a prescription, he can order from any company he wants that's been pre-approved by Anvisa.
So there you go. If you want to talk about the UN treaty, CBD isn't on it. So they're, kind of over-regulating, in quotation marks, in Brazil. You're there in a medical capacity for that patient population, directly getting to doctors so that patients can get their medicine. Colombia, kind of wide open. What's the feeling with Mexico?
Mexico, I mean, they're kind of flip-flopping left and right, but I think they'll get their act together this year or in 2020, and there's even talk about legalizing cannabis, THC recreationally. So
yeah, conversation in Mexico, while it does shift and maybe takes a step back every once in a while from an American perspective, from the U.S. perspective, they have definitely been on a forward march this whole time. If you look at the big picture, compared to how we are doing.
Yeah, I think they're probably in second place after Canada in that respect of going, a major population density, getting recreational. So that or adult use, as they say nowadays.
Right, and 3 times the size. And so and to go back to numbers, if you do take Colombia, Mexico, and Brazil together, then you do get the population of the United States alone.
Exactly.
And there's your gateway into South America, Central America, North America. So as far as timelines are concerned, we're basically in 2020. Podcast land knows no time. We're probably already there. So, what do you expect as far as these markets? What would surprise you? What would you be happy with as far as, Q1, Q4, et cetera?
Yeah, I think for CanaSwiss, for us personally, I think we would like to be in these three major markets that we've been talking about by Q2 of 2020. We're still working on a lot of the paperwork. It's a lot of information that you need to provide. Brazil, for example, they want everything to be GMP certified, so that again adds another layer of complexity to get
Sure.
our products approved. But we're fast moving in that direction, and I'd love to be in these territories very, very soon. Yeah, by
Excellent.
Q2.
You say by Q2. I just want to make sure that I hear you correctly. Usually when someone like you says by Q2, you mean by the end of Q2. Is that about right or no?
You're probably right.
Yeah.
Everything seems to be delayed in this industry. I mean,
Sure.
every time I think we have things more or less handled with time, everything gets shifted around a little bit. But
Absolutely.
again, you have to be able to adapt very, very quickly. This market is moving at lightning speed. We've discussed this before, and there's no doubt that it won't slow down anytime soon.
Yeah. If you're building,
Although there is a major correction going on right now with valuations, etc., and but this also has to do with the fact that there isn't enough dispensaries open in order to sell these products, and so I think it's not only on the manufacturers side where there's some delays, but also regulatory wise and opening up new stores. And again, something that I think we've discussed at length before as well, the studies aren't there. So as soon as the clinical trials and the studies prove, the ability to help certain conditions, then there'll be the next flood of interest coming into the space.
yeah, this is essentially, globally speaking, this is still essentially phase one here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
we're in the infancy stage right now.
There we go. We can talk about valuations later, another time, meaning, the correction and where it is and how correct the correction is.
Yeah.
So we'll save that.
Okay.
And then, of course, we've got to save the conversation about science because we don't have enough of it. So we'll let ourselves catch up to science before we have a conversation about science.
Exactly. But I'm sure we'll be talking about it pretty soon.
Of course. Boris, thank you for your time. Very much appreciate it. Looking forward to catching up on all things in all territories sooner than later.
Fantastic. Thank you.